Hi, y'all. It's Rick here, and welcome to Uncommon Communion for the third Monday of Lent. It is March 24th and a very significant and I think somber and yet challenging day on the liturgical calendar for us. And I just want to share a little bit about that today. Let's begin as we always begin by remembering that we are always and everywhere in the holy presence of God. So I have my read on today, Sacred Heart, um, in honor of a great martyr of the 20th century, of the late 20th century. And this was Saint Oscar Romero, who was the Archbishop of El Salvador, who was martyred, killed while he was saying Mass on this day in 1980. So today marks a particular milestone of 45 years since his martyrdom. And I think if you are like me paying attention, El Salvador has been in the news recently because they have an authoritarian president who is working with our regime in this country to house deportees, many of whom now at this point we're seeing were probably almost certainly sent illegally against a judge's orders in a prison that is absolutely reprehensible. So El Salvador is very much still in our minds as a place where justice needs to come if we are people of faith who are following Christ and seeking justice in all that we strive for. So if you know something already about Archbishop Oscar Romero, Saint Oscar Romero, um, perhaps you'll learn a thing or two in some of his words and the prayer that I'm going to share with you to end this time. I'm going to put links to many of these things into the notes of Uncommon Communion. If you're not already paying attention to the notes or seeing the notes, please take a look at those today because, again, there's going to be some valuable links if you would like to link to the prayer that I'm going to share and also to some videos of Archbishop St. Oscar Romero. So I want to start with a little bit of reading. I'm going to read a few things to you. First of all Saints. This, if you are following my written blog, you will see this comes up a lot. This is very much one of my top 5, if not top 3 desert island books. And today, the author, Robert Ellsberg, tells us about St. Oscar Romero. And one of the really, I think, significant parts about Oscar Romero, where he can very much inform us today, is that he was a person who had a transformation. He was a person who had his heart turned from where it was to where it became in solidarity with the poor, in solidarity with the oppressed. But he didn't start out that way. When he was made bishop, he was really made bishop, archbishop, because he was a conservative pick. He was kind of bookish and scholarly and really not that involved in the politics of the time, the tension between the ultra rich and the peasantry, the poor. It was actually once a friend of his, another priest that he oversaw, who I believe is also a saint now, Rutio Grande, he was murdered. And Romero went and celebrated his funeral and really saw firsthand the suffering of the people. And this really is what changed Romero. And the Ellsberg in All Saints has this to say about Archbishop Romero and his journey. The church in El Salvador was not the first church to suffer persecution. The anomaly was that here the persecutors dared to call themselves Christians. Their victims did not die simply for clinging to the faith, but for clinging, like Jesus, to the poor. It was this insight that marked a new theological depth in Romero's message. For Romero, the church's option for the poor was not just a matter of pastoral priorities. It was a defining characteristic of Christian faith. Quote, a church that does not unite itself to the poor in order to denounce from the place of the poor the injustice committed against them is not truly the Church of Jesus Christ, Romero wrote. On another occasion, he said, quote, on this point, there is no possible neutrality. We either serve the life of the Salvadorans or we are accomplices in their death. We either believe in a God of life or we serve the idols of death. I think it goes without saying how relevant these words are for us 45 years later here in the United States. And it is unquestionable that Romero and his journey, his words, his story have touched countless people, including one I want to read his a reflection from. This is a book called Not Less Than Everything. I'll put a link to it again, along with other things in the notes. But the author says this. He says, I was moved by Oscar Romero as well because he loved his country and denounced all that disgraced it. He believed that persecution afflicted Christ because it afflicted his followers. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Acts 9:4. And despite the transparent risk to his life, Romero never found prudent reasons for silence. At a time when it was much safer to claim that everyone shared equal blame for his country's distress, he publicly affirmed that the ruling class's economic self-interest was the main cause of state violence, and that its security forces' primary agenda was to suppress protest. He denounced selfishness as a sin that dehumanized, and he exhorted the rich to take on as their own the problem of the poor. We're not quite to the point yet in this country where security forces are coming after average, everyday people. We're also not that far from that, because that's exactly what happened in the illegal action that the regime did a little more than a week ago in taking innocent people and putting them on planes to El Salvador. I want to conclude with some words directly from Saint Romero himself, and then share a prayer that is in honor of him that I hope will inspire us and guide us. And if you've never heard this prayer, I hope it is one that will touch you and challenge you, as it has touched me and challenged me for quite a while. So these words, again, come from Romero himself. And he was receiving death threats throughout the month of February and of March in 1980. And he said this to an interviewer. He said, you can tell them, these would be the people who are giving him death threats, that he knew were related to the government itself. He said in the interview, you can tell them if they succeed in killing me, then I pardon them, and I bless those who carry out the killing. But I wish that they could realize that they are wasting their time. A bishop will die, but the Church of God, the people, will never perish. As things were heating up and he knew that the forces were aligning against him, March 23rd, in his homily, and I believe audio exists of this, I'll try to find it and put a link to it again in the notes. He says this in a radio address, speaking to the army. And again, he knew that's where there was opposition to the work that he was doing on behalf of Christ, on behalf of the church. He says, brothers, you are a part of our own people. You are killing your own brother and sister, campesinos, and against any order a man may give to kill, God's law must prevail. You shall not kill. No soldier is obliged to obey an order against the law of God. No one has to observe an immoral law. It is time now for you to reclaim your conscience and obey your conscience rather than the command to sin. In the name of God, then, and in the name of this suffering people whose laments rise up each day more tumultuously toward heaven, I beg you, I beseech you, I order you, in the name of God, stop the repression. Again, I'll seek to find the audio for that. To hear it in his own words, just the words themselves proclaimed are so powerful. But to hear them in his own words, the eve of his martyrdom, are just so challenging to me for a very long time. I want to conclude with a prayer that for a while was attributed to him, but it actually now we know someone else wrote this. The person who wrote this was Bishop Ken Utner of Saginaw, Michigan. And he wrote this in tribute to Romero. And I read this now because I think it should nourish us and challenge us as we face in this country the continued march on a daily basis towards authoritarianism. And that the church, bishops in this country, the bishop in the diocese where I live, the Catholic bishop, and many other Catholic bishops and bishops of other denominations and leaders are supporting that. And Romero tells us, no, a church who follows Christ cannot, does not, must not support violence, torture, cruelty, and all of those that we are seeing on a daily basis. So here is this prayer, and we'll close with this. It helps now and then to step back and to take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is another way of saying that the kingdom is always lying beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water the seeds already planting, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces effects far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do something well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and to do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own. Blessing and good, my friends. Be well.